We're here, we're queer, and we love the Lord. That's right, you're listening to Coming Out Christian, a podcast about life at the intersection of queer identity and Christian faith. This fun, faithful, and sometimes irreverent podcast is a production of Love Boldly, an Ohio-based nonprofit creating spaces where LGBTQIA+ people can flourish in Christianity. I'm one of your hosts, Siobhan Boyd-Nelson, and my co-host is the Reverend Dr. Ben Huelskamp, Executive Director of Love Boldly. So join us, and let's find out who's coming out today. Well, hello there, Ben.
Hello, Siobhan. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Fancy seeing you here on Coming Out Christian. What's going on with you?
Oh, not too much. Hopefully enjoying the warmer weather we are hopefully having at this point. And you know what? It occurs to me that one of our past guests will be getting married the day that this episode comes out. So I will be getting ready for his wedding.
Ooh.
And hopefully just enjoying a wonderful day with a ton of friends at that special gathering.
Wonderful. Congratulations to that past guest. I love love. I love weddings. What fun, especially a spring wedding. That's amazing. That's beautiful.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
All right. I got a question for you today, Ben.
Okay.
Tell me about your relationship with cartoons. Like, do you have a favorite cartoon? Did you watch them growing up? What are you doing here? I always loved them. I was actually one of those kids who was watching after school cartoons well into my teens. So what about you?
So I wasn't a big cartoon person growing up. I guess if I
Ooh.
include animated cartoons versus like in the paper type cartoons, then we did watch before school in the morning. We would usually watch either Garfield the Cat, or we would
Okay.
watch Scooby-Doo. And those were, I don't know why those were on before school in the morning, but at least until high school, that's what my sister and I did for like the half hour that we were eating breakfast before we had to leave for school. So that was my cartoon. I didn't really get into any other like print cartoons or online cartoons until I got to college. And then it
Okay.
was whatever the, what's the one with the Vikings?
Oh, I know exactly who you're talking about. In the Sunday paper, right?
Yeah. That one and
Yes.
Calvin and Hobbes were two of my
Hagar.
favorites.
Hagar the Horrible.
Yes. Those were my favorites in college and onward. And then, of
Wow.
course, our guest today is one of my favorite cartoonists. And a lot of his work has meant a lot to me. So I'm sure we'll get to that very shortly. But definitely that is part of my story now.
Yeah, I am so excited to talk to our guests, and I'll tell you why. I think that being able to draw is a superpower. Like
Agreed.
literally, I have always been in just awe and admiration of people who can draw. And I think it's because I'm an artistic person who cannot draw for anything. And I have all of these, I don't know, pictures, visions in my head that I wish I could get out on paper. And so that just feels like a superpower, the ability to see something in your head and actually transfer it onto paper. Amazing. I am a cartoon girl. I'm going to just be really honest with you, Ben. To this day, my wife and I, we watch an episode of Bob's Burgers every other night because we are working our way through that entire series. And when we were dating, we really connected over Pinky and the Brain. And we go back and forth on who's Pinky and who's the brain. It could be either one of us. We like to trade off on that one. Ben, you seem to have you have an opinion on who's Pinky and who's the brain. What do you think?
No comment. I'm friends with both of you, and I'm not going to give one of you the brain title and one of you Pinky title. I can see how it could go back and forth, but that's all I'm saying.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I'll tell you, it's not an insult in our house to be Pinky, or to be the brain. I don't know. You could look at it either way. But let's get into today's guest, who has an amazing superpower, and that I'm so excited to talk with. Today's guest is David Hayward, who uses he/him pronouns. David Hayward, who is known online as the Naked Pastor, is an artist, cartoonist, writer, and former pastor who now helps people find spiritual freedom beyond religious walls. After nearly 30 years in ministry, he left the church in 2010 and began using his art and words to challenge religious control and inspire authenticity, equality, and spiritual independence. He's an LGBTQ plus ally, a feminist, and a progressive voice for those deconstructing faith and reclaiming their own path. His work includes daily cartoons, books, and his own online community, The Lasting Supper, a safe and supportive space for people leaving or questioning religion. David lives near St. John, New Brunswick, with his wife, Lisa. David, thank you so much for being here as a guest on Coming Out Christian. We are going to start with our first question that we always ask our guests. What is your testimony? What is your story at the intersection of queer identity and Christian faith?
Well, thanks so much for having me on your show. It's a real pleasure to be here. Yeah, so my story, thanks for the introduction. That's it in a nutshell, is I was in the ministry for 30 years, but I've been in the church much, much longer than that. And it's, I don't do things half measure. I'm an all in kind of guy. So I was totally all in the church and the ministry and the Bible, all that. And so I also, when I was growing up, we weren't dedicated to any one denomination at all. Like when I was born, I was baptized Anglican, but we moved around a lot, and so we just went to whatever church was convenient mostly, or the best show in town. And so there wasn't any one denomination I was devoted to, but we ended up in the Pentecostal church. Uh, and then I went to a Pentecostal Bible college, went to an evangelical seminary. I got ordained Presbyterian, and then I ended up as a vineyard pastor, which is on the other end of the spectrum from Presbyterian. So I've been all over I call myself my own ecumenical movement because I've been everywhere. And
Yeah.
so, but in the midst of all that, what I think I had an advantage because I never felt committed to any one worldview or any one theology or whatever, and which really was in sync with my own personal drive to be my most authentic self and to know the truth, free from everybody's opinion and all the authorities and all the structures and all the theologies and all this kind of stuff. And so even though I might have found myself in more conservative expressions of the church, I always felt like I was on the edge or beyond the edge,
Mm.
especially when it came to realities like the LGBTQIA plus and so on. I don't ever remember feeling, oh, they're going to hell, or it's a sin, or they don't belong in leadership, or anything like that. But I found myself in structures that sort of leaned that way.
Hmm.
And so in 2010, when I left the ministry, I was happy I did it when I did, because it wasn't too long after that the denomination I was a part of decided to vote no on being affirming. So
Mm.
as I got out before that hammer fell. So, um, and for me, how it intersects, how my life and my work intersects with LGBTQIA is because I feel the church in many ways has drawn a line in the sand. This this is the line. This is, beyond that you shall not pass kind of thing.
Yes.
And so it was. for me, a fundamental misunderstanding of what love is to
Mm,
exclude people because of who they are. And so that to me was a deal breaker. And that's why I fight so hard on that. It's like a front line for me. It's like the battleground.
hmm.
It seems for many churches that that's the hill they're going to die on. And so that's where the heat of the battle is. And so if there's like I said, a profound misunderstanding of what love is, then I'm going to try to help people understand what I think love is and
Yeah.
overcome that that blindness or that obstacle
Hmm.
to inclusion and equal rights and all that kind of thing. So that's where I started cartooning in 2005. I left the ministry in 2010. Then I went all in with Naked Pastor after that, and that's what I've been doing ever since. Sort of um, drawing my cartoons, stirring up the pot.
They certainly do in the most beautiful and insightful, witty way possible,
Thank you.
like all great cartoons are. But I think we should probably start with the Naked Pastor and what that name means. Why did you choose that name? And I just want to be clear, you are clothed and you
I am.
are regularly clothed
Yeah,
in public.
yeah. My wife is the only one that knows otherwise. But
Yes.
the back in 2004 or five, when I decided I was going to start blogging, and that's when blogging was at its peak,
Yes.
and tons of pastors were blogging, and I thought, well, am I just going to be more noise? Am I going to just be adding to you know, the noise of blogging and pastors blogging and all that. And so I thought, I'm going to be me. I'm going to be my most real, raw, authentic self online. I'm not going to hide anything. I'm going to just expose everything. I'm going to be totally
Mm,
out there and not conceal or adorn anything. I'm just going to be very real. And so that's what naked pastor means. I was going to tear back the veil on what really happens in the life of a pastor, in the life of a church. There's not just great sermons and great worship music and great coffee and donuts and great kids programs and youth programs and all that. There's also conflict and money problems and doubts and fears and mortgages and staff. There's all kinds of stuff that a lot of pastors don't talk about. Also, uh, there's figuring out how to integrate people who are different. And there's
mm.
also issues like spiritual abuse and things like that. So I decided, okay, I'm going to be completely naked about what goes on in the church and in my life. Totally honest. Here we go. And I started blogging. And then about a year later, I thought, I'm an artist. I can draw. I love cartoons. Let's see if my cartoons can help you know, fast forward my message a little bit and give it
Yeah.
more of an impact. And that's when it really took off.
Yeah. It's your cartoons, I would say, are almost in the vein of what we would say a New Yorker or a political
Oh,
cartoon off.
well, that's my gold standard is the New
Okay.
Yorker.
Okay. Yeah.
That's my gold standard. It's like one frame, black and white, very simple, hard, as few words as possible. That's my goal, and I would love one day to be published in the New Yorker. So that to
Mhm.
me is the ultimate. So thank you.
Absolutely. I mean, that's definitely what comes to mind because the images are so simple. Um, Not simple, but they're beautiful, but they're simple because there isn't a lot of extra in the frame. It is
Minimal.
it is a yes, it's minimal. It's a very focused image, but the message is profound. And it's sometimes overwhelming when you look at it and it's like, oh yes, you're saying so much in
Mm.
this very minimalistic way. And often, and I think this is why I think of drawing as a superpower, is that when you don't, words sometimes get in the way. because words have not just their denotation, but their connotation and all of this other things. And sometimes the image can just kind of shortcut all of that and bypass that. And I think that's what your images do.
Yeah, my most popular cartoons don't have words,
Mm-hmm.
actually. And part of that could be because there's an immediate impact and you don't have to read. But also, they're global in their appeal. It crosses language
Yes.
barriers, right? So, yeah, I would say my top 10 cartoons or whatever are probably, most of them don't have words. So that's, to me, that I try to achieve that. No, I can't always, but
Mm-hmm.
that's what I try to do.
Now, something that you, I think, address in your art, but you also say on your website, is questions are the answer. And
Hmm.
coming from a pastor, I think that means something extra, right? It's one thing for a layperson to say that, it's another thing for a pastor to say it. What do you mean by that? Questions are the answer, and how does that fit within your deconstruction process?
Yeah, so questions are the answer is the title of one of my books, actually,
Mm,
and where I talk a lot about that, the value of question, the value of curiosity, the value of wonder, the value of doubt.
mm,
Because I grew up in religious Christian church evangelical cultures that promoted certainty
yes.
and faith and belief, but that they were all confident, you know, expressions of your faith,
Yes.
and that and there's a lot of scriptures that come to mind, like, you know, lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, or doubting Thomas,
Mm-hmm.
uh, blessed are those who believe and have not seen, and
Yes.
so on and so forth. And so for me, what I found though was and a lot of spiritual um, uh, writers or thinkers or leaders in the past have written about how uh, the real doorway to wisdom is questions and
Mm-hmm.
curiosity. Uh, uh, and some have said the opposite of faith is not doubt but certainty. And so
Mm.
I I decided many years ago to honor my curiosity, my theological curiosity, spiritual curiosity, and start doing some research on my own because I wasn't being assisted in any way in my
Yeah.
spiritual journey. I had to do all the research myself. And I do actually remember I was a young pastor at the time, and I would go and hide out in a local university library and read abstracts and journals and books that were considered forbidden, like in Buddhism or whatever other philosophy or whatever. And I remember one day I was reading on Buddhism at the time. Actually, no, I was reading on Krishnamurti, who was an Eastern philosopher, and there was a tap on my shoulder, and another local pastor says, "What are you reading that crap for? There's enough
Oh
to read
no.
there's enough to read in Christianity. You don't need to be reading that." So I was scolded and shamed and corrected because I was reading outside of, allowed literature. And so that for me was a sign that um, that that sense of trying to control what I was reading or exposing myself to was an attempt to control my spiritual life, and I am that for me is anathema. And so
Okay.
I decided I had to find out on my own and continue my journey of curiosity. And I'm glad I did.
Yeah, and I think you did, even as a pastor, and you were scolded for it, but you continued down that path, which is, I think, a great example for lay folks of it's okay to be spiritually and theologically curious, especially for those of us who grew up in I love the way you put it, the confident areas of Christianity, where to express doubt was to express doubt in God, in God's self, and not necessarily in, the world or what's going on around you in the world. Ben, I
Mhm.
want to bring you into this because you are a pastor in a church, and David has talked about blogging about what it is to be a pastor and the mortgage and staffing and the politics and all of that. And I've been a board member for a church, so I know there's a lot of background. It isn't pretty. And people don't want to see it. And they don't. And I think that we try to make the church look really pretty and safe. What is the value to you as a pastor, Ben, for David to be, kind of leading the way and exposing that and being vulnerable and honest around those truths?
Well, I think it aids in the conversation. I mean, we are having more and more of a conversation as a church, at least in more moderate to progressive churches. Although I think the conversation is happening across the board, but David's work and the work of others is allowing some of these conversations to happen. The kind of rosy image of your quintessential white American church, and I mean that both in the building and the congregation, that it mirrors the white picket fence and the 2.5 kids and the loving family. We have that model. That's what a lot of folks think about when they think of what church means. We still have many people in this country that think, when they think about what a pastor does, they think about Sunday morning and
Yeah.
maybe when someone dies. It's like
Hmm.
weddings, funerals, maybe a sick call once in a while, and Sunday. And they wonder what the pastor does the other 6 days of the week. I have a number of friends who have asked the question very honestly, who are not church people or are no longer church people, why do we have to pay clergy? And
Mm.
Siobhan, you've asked the question, and many others have as well, about not so much why do we pay clergy, but what are the repercussions of a clergy member being paid, being hired by a congregation, being subject to that congregation and therefore subject to their whims, for job security, perhaps. Um, so I think this conversation exposes some of those, not just the not so fun parts of ministry. Like, if you like liturgy, then planning the liturgy is fun. Worrying about the boiler failing is not so fun.
Right.
We're not even talking about that. We're talking about the kind of the underbelly of ministry, of pastors who are being told by their congregations, "Hey, we're going to pay you all but a subsistence wage, but we know you're doing this because you have a higher calling, and that makes it right
Hmm.
that we pay you so little." Or congregations that pay their lead pastor, their executive pastor, quite a bit, but rely heavily on ministry interns who make almost no money.
Right.
We this conversation is brewing. It still needs to brew more, as does just what the shape of at least American Christianity looks like in the 21st and further centuries, if not global Christianity. But again, it helps that conversation along. I think it also helps the conversation along that what works at, say, Saddleback Church in California doesn't work at my little church here in Columbus, Ohio.
Right. Yeah.
What works in a Catholic parish that has adapted to the fact that it's no longer in a working class Irish Catholic neighborhood isn't going to work in an evangelical or Pentecostal congregation. I mean, the one size fits all for churches model just doesn't work. It probably never did, but it definitely doesn't work now. And again, this conversation exposes that fact. I think it also exposes that clergy are human, that we have
Whew.
needs of our own, be that physical, be that mental health. Um, Much like David just said, the kind of being scolded, being found out, looking at things that aren't, the Christian texts. also go to how pastors are perceived around the work they do for pastoral counseling or for grief support or for mental health.
Mhm.
And again, we're realizing more and more, and I shouldn't say laity, folks that are outside of ministry are realizing that pastors have needs too.
Which is a great thing to recognize, I think,
Totally.
because when we recognize that pastors have needs too, they're living lives, they have maybe, mental health struggles generally, families that they need to be devoted to. I think we have a better church generally. I think it actually improves the church and the church experience for everyone. Um, David, I want to ask you about moving from being a full-time pastor to being a full-time cartoonist, and what that feels like for you. Since we're talking about what it is to be a pastor, what was that change like for you personally?
So I left the ministry in 2010 after serving the church as a full-time pastor for 20 years. And I'd served different congregations. I planted a couple churches and so on. So, and then growing up in the church
Mm-hmm.
and going to Bible college and going to seminary,
Mm.
uh, uh, Lisa and I um, were joined at the hip all the way through our ministry. She would have odd jobs maybe, but mostly she was a stay-at-home mom. And then um, anyway, when I left the ministry, she decided to go to university.
Oh,
So I was 52 and she was 48, and she decided to go to university and get her nursing degree. And so we left the church, and it was much worse than we expected. We thought we were
oh,
going to stay connected, and after a year maybe go back, and support the church as members and so on. But it went sour almost immediately,
oh no.
and and so we lost our friends, we lost our support, we lost my paycheck, uh, we lost my sense of destiny, vision, purpose,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and then we lost each other because now she's off to university full time, studying to be a nurse, and building friendships at the university, and I was lost. And
Wow.
our marriage just about did not make it through that period of time. It was a couple of years there. It was like, I don't know if we're going to make it or not. It was really, really touch and go. Um, and then one day she said, she told me that I needed help.
Oh no.
So I went, I went and I got some therapy, coaching, et cetera, et cetera. And Lisa and I basically sat down and had to renegotiate our relationship because everything had
Mm-hmm.
changed.
Mm-hmm.
And we made it. In fact, I wrote another book on that whole episode, and I call it "Till Doubt Do Us Part: When Changing Beliefs Change Your Marriage." And
Wow.
it's helped a lot of people. But basically, I just share our story about how when we left, uh, we were just deconstructing all along,
Mm-hmm.
and different kinds of deconstructions. There's a deconstruction of your beliefs, but there's a deconstruction from your religious life, like
Yes.
church. And so
Yes.
for us, that's was sudden and traumatic,
Mm-hmm.
the deconstruction of our church life. And we had to figure out how to stay together. And we did, thank goodness. We're happier than we've ever been. But that was a really, really difficult transition away from church life.
And your story, I can't help but think of young people or really anybody from the LGBTQIA plus community who
Uh-huh.
leaves a church, who makes the decision to leave church. And there's a lot of questions about why folks in the queer community stay in churches that aren't affirming. And I think your story is so much of that reason. It is the fear of losing or having that deconstruction of religious life, of losing the friends, losing the support systems, and having to really renegotiate what your life looks like. outside of the church, when the church has played such a huge role in who you are, how you spend your time, and who you spend your time with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a excellent observation. There's all kinds of coming out, right?
Yes.
So there's coming out spiritually. I had to do that with my family, friends, and my church, and it was very, very traumatic. I understand a little bit what it means to come out,
Mm-hmm.
but what I can't identify with is that I wasn't rejected because of who I was. You know what I mean?
Yes.
My
Right.
my identity or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. I felt rejected because of what I thought,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so there's a huge difference there. But I totally understand why. I hear it from people all the time. Why would you go to a church if you're gay? I mean, they hate you. Why would you do that?
Right.
I totally understand why.
Yeah.
It's the church has the corner on the market when it comes to community. I mean, when you walk into a church, um, you're handed community on a platter.
Yes.
You're handed immediate friendships, immediate activities, immediate babysitters,
Mm-hmm.
immediate immediate potlucks,
Mm-hmm.
immediate, child's, whatever. Like there's
Yeah.
all mechanics, even doctor. There's all kinds of community, and it's incredible. But at what cost, right? For so many people.
Yes.
But
Yes.
I totally understand people. I can't walk away from that. I'm going to either hide who I am or put up with the marginalization just in order to enjoy some of this community. I totally get it. It's the same with some women I know who been in abusive relationships who find it very difficult to leave because they're walking
Mm-hmm.
away from all kinds of things, not just abuse. They're
Right.
walking away from financial security. They're walking away from a home. They're walking away from family, extended
Mm-hmm.
family. They're walking away from, all kinds of things. So I get it. I get it totally.
Now, you talked about community and the community that the church creates, which, when you say that the church has cornered the market on community, the
Yeah.
immediate thought in my head was, wait, that's what they were supposed to do. But then they're supposed to use cornering the market in a good way, right? That's having
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Having that community is supposed to benefit you and not have any drawbacks. Now, you have been working to create your own community called the Lasting Supper. Can you tell us about that and what that looks like?
So my last church, the last church I was pastor of, it was a lovely place, beautiful community, and I was there for 15 years as pastor,
Wow.
and I had a wonderful leadership team, worship team, incredible sense of community. I tried to help make manifest along with everybody else what I felt community could be.
Hmm.
Instead of focusing on doing, we would focus on being,
Okay.
and we sort of adopted Bonhoeffer's life together idea that visionary thinking kills the church. And so we put it
Mm,
into practice. Let's drop our goals. Let's drop visionary thinking. Let's just be a community, like a functional, happy family. Let's just be together and see what happens. And
yeah.
so we did that, and it was powerful. I have a lot to say about that, but it was very, very powerful. And um, but lo and behold, there's some people who want church to look like church.
Yes. Yes.
And and I said, look, you can't have both. You enjoy the community, right? Yeah. But can we make it look like no? You've got a choice here. You've got a
Right.
choice. And because as you got this wonderful sense of community, it's kind of like reminds me of Peter. Let's build 3 tabernacles here on the mountaintop. This is beautiful.
Hmm.
Let's can this. Let's sell it. And
Yes.
and that's I'm like, it'll kill it.
Nope.
I promise
Yep.
you, it'll kill it. But that's when I knew, okay, it's time for me to leave. They loved the sense of community, but they wanted to let's make something out of this. And I
Mm.
knew it was going to kill it. And you know what? The church no longer exists.
Oh
It's gone.
no.
Yeah. So I decided to start an online community, first of all, to help myself because I was terribly lonely.
Hmm.
And I also realized here I was deconstructing my beliefs, my relationship to the church, and there was zero resources out there. And I felt totally unconnected from everybody else, even though I knew there were people on the same path as I was. So
Yeah.
I decided to start an online community for a place for people to gather, and called it the Lasting Supper. Instead of the Last Supper, it's the Lasting Supper because we always have resources for you, and there's always a place
Hmm.
to hang and a place to vent or whatever. And I apply the same values to this online community, and it's still going. I mean, we have a wonderful community there. I am not your guru. I am not going to lead. We're just going to be, and we're just
Okay.
going to listen. We're just going to support, and it's incredible. It works if you work it.
Wow. Yes, yes. And that idea of not leading, especially as a person who has led, I mean, that has been your life's work, is to lead. And so your ability to be in a community and resist that urge to lead. I just want to name that, because that's a tough thing to do. That's a tough habit to break as a leader.
But if you want a dynamic, uh, functioning, non-toxic community that
Hmm.
is free of coercion and manipulation and control and all kinds of other spiritual abuses, you have to drop your leadership role and become a organic part of the community, um, and just be present, you know.
Yeah.
And we can glean a lot of examples and a lot of inspiration from even from the story of Jesus in the Gospels, where he was constantly relinquishing leadership
Right.
and power and influence even. And like, remember that story? I always love this story where his ministry's on an upswing and there's crowds, and then he's like, you know let's let's avoid the towns and cities. Let's go out into the wilderness. And Peter's like, are you crazy? you know
Yeah.
it's perfect example of somebody who did not care about building something and
Right.
being something,
Hmm.
and so I decided to put it to the test. And you know what? It's amazing the kind of community you can create. And I even applied that same principle to my own family, my
Really?
own, yes. And just being, not trying to lead or, not trying to pressure or make something out of us, just being and honoring everybody who they are, where they are, and being there as a resource for them and support for them if they needed it and wanted it,
Hmm.
just being together. And you know what? It works. It does work.
Wow.
It's powerful, but it's incredibly risky, and it feels scary, and it can be chaotic. But that's what creativity does. It's an energy, it's a power, and it forms amazing communities if you're willing to try it. So I tried it locally until um, people wanted to make it something,
Hmm.
and wanted to brand it or whatever.
Yeah.
And and with my family, we're still, my family, my wife and our three kids, we're best friends, and
Mhm.
it's wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, that
Yeah,
is absolutely beautiful, David. Thank you so much for uh, being naked with us, for being vulnerable and open and sharing your journey with us. It has been absolutely wonderful to get to know you and to get to know your story today.
thank you, thank you, my pleasure.
Y'all, I think we really got to have David back, Ben. David has a lot to say on leadership and pastoring and things like that. So I think we're going to have David back in some way here with Love Boldly. Just want to put that nugget in your ear, David. We heard a lot more to talk about, so expect to hear from us again. But right
Yeah.
now we are going. Awesome. We're going to jump into our query of the day. Yes, you heard it right. That's a pun. That's when we ask our guest, and I ask Ben, and then you, our audience. We want to know what you think about today's query of the day. And because David is an amazing cartoonist, and we talked about cartoons earlier, I got to ask Ben and David, what do you feel about VeggieTales? Was VeggieTales part of your orbit, part of your world at any time? David?
I kind of missed out on VeggieTales. Our kids must have been, I don't know where we fell there, to be
Okay,
honest.
either before or after, but yeah.
Yeah, because VeggieTales, even though, I know about them, and I know some of the scenes
Mm-hmm.
and all that. I never really um, was exposed to that, and I don't think our kids were either. Like,
Wow.
and remember though, I was a part of congregations where there were some people in there who felt anything like that was demonic.
Yeah. Even though
Like
it was so Christian. It was all they did
yeah,
was
even though it was
parables.
Christian. Yeah. So like even like the Smurfs and all that, and
Oh, the Smurfs
all that.
definitely. Yeah. I wasn't really allowed to watch those.
So I remember mentioning seeing a certain movie or something, and people were like, "What?" Or my wife and daughter were reading, oh, Twilight,
Mm-hmm.
and I shared that with somebody, and they came down on me so hard. So
No, no,
so
no.
I was kind of like out of the loop when it came to VeggieTales and all that kind of thing. But also, I'm not much of a motion like animated cartoon guy.
Okay. Yep.
I'm more of a like a New Yorker, Far
Mm-hmm.
Side,
Mm-hmm.
uh, Hagar the Horrible kind of a person.
Oh, a
I
good
like
Far
Hagar the
Side
Horrible too.
calendar from the
Yeah,
90s. Oh, those good Far Side calendars. Those were classic. Got to get one of those again. Ben, what about you and VeggieTales? Did you know about them?
So I didn't know about VeggieTales until high school,
Okay.
and then only sort of in the background. VeggieTales were not all that accepted, I guess is the right word, by the Catholic Church that I grew up in. I had some Catholic friends whose parents let them watch it, but kind
Okay.
of with the disclaimer of like some of the things you might hear may or may not actually be Catholic teaching. So we watched this sort of with a grain of salt almost. But no, VeggieTarian was never something my parents played or anyone in our home congregation played or did anything with. We had other Catholic specific cartoons that were not anthropomorphic vegetables, but were nonetheless terrifying. Also, for any listeners who did not grow up Catholic or did
Oh,
not grow up Catholic in the 90s or the early 2000s, I want you to search the Donut Man. And if you think the Donut Man is appropriate for children, then, there are these people called therapists you may want to talk to.
Oh, wow, really?
oh my
Because the Donut
goodness.
Man, I do
Well,
not believe was appropriate for children. But anyway, that's just me.
Wow,
that's a
okay.
future Google search. Yeah, that's going to be, I'm going right to that one, Ben. And we're going to have a good conversation about that. I loved VeggieTales. I actually thought they were pretty witty. I mean, they were doing parables, but they were doing it in a cartoon way. Like I thought it was like an actual quality cartoon. And I didn't always feel that way about Christian produced things. I still continue not to feel that way about quote unquote Christian produced things. But I think that was one of the better Christian produced pieces of entertainment that came out of the 90s. I would say that. And yeah, I was probably too old to be watching them, but I also went to a private Christian school for 12 years. There was a lot of rolling out the TV and throwing on something for the kids to watch. And VeggieTales was often that. So that's probably why I still enjoy it to this day. But get in there, listeners. Let us know your relationship with the VeggieTales if you have any great memories of watching them growing up. And now we're going to ask Ben to give us a moment in queer history and remind us of our long, long history and all of the amazing things that queer folks have done both in and outside of the church. Ben?
Yeah, so I want to preface what I'm about to talk about with, if any of our listeners have any comments about this, know more about the history of this particular item of queer history that I'll mention, please get in the comments, get on our comments on Instagram or elsewhere, and let our other listeners know more about this. But Siobhan, when you asked me earlier about cartoons, I omitted my absolutely favorite all-time cartoon, which is The Simpsons. I absolutely love The Simpsons.
Okay.
I continue to love The Simpsons. I will always love The Simpsons. So, according to what I've been able to find, the first time that The Simpsons broached LGBTQ identities was in an episode in 2002, with the favorite character, Smithers, the very astute, very well dressed, and obviously very gay sidekick / assistant, Mr. Burns. In that episode, Smithers apparently rides a float in the Springfield Pride Parade, which is titled Still in the Closet, as a joke to his character. Fast forward approximately 14 years, and in 2016, his character officially comes out of the closet. But one thing that I didn't know about the show, and I didn't even know about like the character arc, is that one of Marge's sisters, who these two unmarried, pretty
like
unpleasant,
spinsters,
chain-smoking women, at one point, apparently one of them comes out as a lesbian. Did not know that in the arc. Sort of makes sense, given how they're portrayed, but apparently one of them comes out to the other one and just says, I don't know why you haven't figured this out yet, but I'm gay. So there are other gay characters, queer characters mixed in there. And again, I don't know that much about LGBTQ representation in either The Simpsons or in cartoons in general. So again, I would encourage any of our listeners, viewers, get in our comments, DM us, let us know what you know about queer representation, particularly in cartoons.
Amazing. Thank you for that piece of history, Ben. That's really, really cool. All right. David, it has been an amazing episode. We've got to thank you again for taking the time to join us. Is there anything that you would like to promote? Where can folks find you on social media and find your beautiful, amazing art? I'm just trying to figure out which pieces I'm buying. There's so many. It's hard to choose, David.
Well, my base camp is NakedPastor.com, and you can find me everywhere from there. But my most active account, really, well, not most active, but I will say my safest account is my Instagram account, Naked Pastor. I keep a very close eye on that. Facebook, it's more difficult. X, it's even more difficult. So it's if you want to follow me on Instagram, Naked Pastor is where you'll find me. So and yeah, you can support me. I'm on all social media, including Substack. If you want to support me by buying cartoons or whatever, that'd be great. And thanks so much for having me on. It's been wonderful.
Awesome. And if folks want to learn more about the Lasting Supper, they can go to nakedpastor.com and learn about that as well.
Yeah, you can go to www.thelastingsupper.com and read up. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, David, for being here. Listeners, please go check out his artwork. It is absolutely beautiful. I think that you'll really enjoy it. Check out his books, his blog, thelastingsupper.com. Get into it. And Ben, thank you for being here. It was great to hang out with you again. And listeners,
Thank you so much, Siobhan.
Awesome. Listeners, remember to like, remember to subscribe, remember to tell your friends. You're not a good friend if you don't tell them about this podcast. And we will see you next time on Coming Out Christian.
Thanks so much for joining us today. We hope this conversation encouraged you, challenged you, and maybe just helped you feel a little less alone on your journey. If this podcast has been meaningful to you, would you consider supporting the work of Love Boldly? Love Boldly's mission is to create spaces where LGBTQIA+ people can flourish in Christianity, and your donation helps make conversations like this one possible. You can give at www.loveboldly.net/donate. That's www.loveboldly.net/donate. Want to stay connected with the podcast? Follow us on Instagram at comingoutchristian_podcast for updates, resources, and community. Until next time, remember that you can be queer and Christian and queer.